Legend has it that humans only ever access 10% of their brain capacity. Yet, that mere 10% allows us to achieve so much. So what would happen if we could unlock our brain's full 100% potential?
What would happen if, for some reason, we ignore somebody unlocked 100% of the cerebral capacity?
100%?
Yes?
This concept was brought to the screen in the film Lucy. Lucy, a victim in a drug trafficking ring, is accidentally exposed to a synthetic substance called CPH4. This compound gradually boosts her brain capacity from 20% to 50% and eventually to 100%. And what happened? Lucy transforms from a seemingly weak woman into an action hero. Her intelligence skyrockets. She can master complex knowledge in a matter of moments. As she nears 100%, her abilities become truly beyond comprehension, mind reading, telepathy, even the manipulation of space and time. So does the story in Lucy hold any truth? Is it real that we only access 10% of our brain power? It is said that Einstein was one of the few who accessed over 20%, which is what made him a genius. Is this true?
We have a better idea about what made Albert Einstein smarter than the rest of it. It's not about what he learned. Dana's going to tell us the shape of his brain. It was extraordinary.
Now, if you look at Einstein's brain, you can see completely different.
Albert Einstein may have been the world's greatest genius, but what made him so smart?
Tonight, CBS 4's Dr. Sean Caniff shows us the bizarre story of what happened to Einstein's brain after he died.
First, let's discuss a fascinating story about Einstein's brain, the one that was stolen. Einstein passed away in 1955 at the age of 76 due to an aortic aneurysm. His death was a major news event. Interestingly, before his passing, Einstein had a specific wish. He did not want to be buried. Idolized by so many, he requested that his body be cremated and his ashes scattered secretly away from the public eye. The pathologist responsible for performing Einstein's autopsy was Dr. Thomas Harvey. During the procedure, Dr. Harvey became intensely curious about one thing: Einstein's brain. He wondered if the scientist's genius was linked to his brain's anatomy. Dr. Harvey then asked permission from Hans Albert, Einstein's son, to remove and study the brain. Hans agreed on the condition that the study must be completed during the autopsy, and the brain then returned to be cremated with the rest of the body. But that's not what happened. Dr. Harvey secretly kept the brain, storing it and taking it home without the family's consent and unbeknownst to anyone else. He kept it hidden for 23 years. In 1978, 2 decades later, a journalist named Stephen Levy grew suspicious that Einstein's brain might still exist. He had read a biography of Einstein by Ronald Clark, which mentioned that Einstein himself had requested his brain be preserved for study. So, where was Einstein's brain?
Clark said that Einstein wanted his brain preserved for study. And Michael wondered, what happened to the brain? He never heard about it. So he looked at every medical journal he could find, and he looked for any publication, couldn't find a thing.
Stephen Levy began his search. Information from Princeton Hospital, where the autopsy took place, indicated that the last person to see the body was Dr. Harvey, who, regrettably, had vanished since then. Fortunately, there was another doctor who had once met Dr. Harvey.
So I started my research, the place you're looking at now, Princeton Hospital. I went to Walter Seligman, the vice president, who confirmed the autopsy took place and the brain was removed by Dr. Harvey. But he said Dr. Harvey had left long ago, taken all the records with him, and he had no idea where he was.
witnessing him with samples of Einstein's brain and being asked to study them. It turned out Dr. Harvey had been moving from place to place.
It's Einstein's brain. Would you mind putting that away?
Either to hide or to try and unlock the brain's secrets. Through this doctor, Stephen Levy was finally able to contact Dr. Harvey. Initially, Dr. Harvey refused an interview.
And an answer came, and I said, is this the same Dr. Thomas Harvey who worked at Princeton Hospital in 1955? And there was a pause, almost as if the person was deciding whether to answer or not.
But after persistent persuasion from Stephen Levy, the pathologist finally agreed to talk. Levy was stunned.
And that next morning, it was a Saturday morning, very rainy morning, I took a taxi from my hotel to the lab where Dr. Harvey worked.
Dr. Harvey had kept Einstein's brain preserved for all those years in 2 large jars filled with the preserving solution, and it had been sliced into 240 different sections. Dr. Harvey also kept dozens of photographs of the whole, intact brain from various angles.
And in there, I could see like a pinkish conch-shaped mass, sort of a chunk of gray spongy matter, and some things that look like bloated dental floss. And he puts it down and said, here's Einstein's cerebellum. This is a chunk of his cerebral cortex. And these are, brain aorta.
The news of the brain's rediscovery went viral. Eventually, Dr. Harvey was compelled to hand over the brain to a museum, and extensive research began. Now, let's discuss what researchers discovered about Einstein's brain. The first study came from Sandra Whittleson, a prominent Canadian brain expert. From the photos taken by Dr. Harvey, it was found that Einstein's brain was relatively smaller than the average human brain. But here's the fascinating part. The posterior section of Einstein's brain, called the parietal lobe, was 15% wider than a normal brain.
You can see completely different. This is relatively narrow. This is normal human. All the brains I've ever looked at are like this. Einstein's brain was amazingly wide.
This area is strongly connected to visual and spatial reasoning. Dr. Whittleson suggested this is what gave Einstein his extraordinary visual ability to solve physics and mathematical problems, such as when he formulated the general theory of relativity in 4 dimensions.
What my own work has been involved in is not just the anatomy of the brain, but how it supports cognition. The blue area, visual interpretation, that's very important for visual imagery, and that is also the region that one would expect was crucial in Albert Einstein's thinking when he was developing the theory of relativity.
Even more intriguing, a normal brain typically has a dividing line called the Sylvian fissure, which separates the upper and lower parts of the brain. Strangely, in Einstein's brain, this fissure was interrupted, making the area related to visual processing even larger. It's no surprise then that Einstein was highly imaginative. Almost all his theories were formulated without real-world experiments, but through mental exercises often called thought experiments.
Picture, if you will, the vastness of space, and through it, a framework of invisible lines, like wire mesh supporting a pillar of concrete. Yet, unlike rigid wire, this grid work is curved.
He actually, in his own writings, and his biographers have quoted him saying how he doesn't think in words, but he thinks in pictures, he thinks in images.
That's just the first study. The second came from Dr. Marion Diamond, a brain expert from the United States. She found that Einstein's glial cell count was significantly higher than a normal brain. Glial cells are crucial. They provide nutrients to nerve cells and protect them, thus maximizing nerve function.
It actually refers to glue. The way they were originally defined is the glue of the nervous system. If any of these cells become dysfunctional, that will impact neurons as well, and neurons will also become dysfunctional.
Dr. Diamond proposed that this is what made Einstein superior in absorbing and processing information.
So we were using the data that we had
Other research also
over the
indicated
years
that
on
Einstein's
experimental
corpus
work
callosum
to
was thicker.
hypothesize
The corpus
Einstein
callosum is
might
the
have
thick
more
band of
glial
nerves
cells
that connects
than
the
the
brain's
average male.
left and right hemispheres. With a thicker corpus callosum, communication between Einstein's two hemispheres was much faster. This may be why Einstein was not only scientifically brilliant, but also capable of integrating science with art. He was a talented violinist. The compelling reason he continued to play, he once said, was that it helped him think.
This marriage. Apologies. Mozart helps me think.
These are some of the key findings on Einstein's brain. But do these anatomical differences truly account for his genius? Scientists are divided on this point. Some agree, others do not. Regardless, let's answer the question we started with. Is it true that we only access 10% of our brain power? Was Einstein a genius because he accessed more? The truth, guys, is that it's simply a myth. Even Luc Besson, the director of Lucy, was aware that the premise of the film was based on a myth.
You know, the theory of the 10% is wrong. Yeah, of course it's wrong. I know it. I work on the thing for 9 years. But, guys, it's a film.
So where did this myth come from? The exact source of the statement is murky. But traces of the myth point back to a misunderstanding of a statement made by William James, the father of American psychology in the early 1900s. James was studying the development of a child prodigy named William Sidis, who had an IQ higher than Einstein and was accepted into Harvard at the age of 11. Based on his research on Sidis, James made this statement: man only uses a small part of his possible mental resources. James was referring to mental potential, not the physical brain, and he never gave a specific percentage. However, somehow the media misinterpreted his statement, linking it to the brain and adding the false percentage. The fact is, all brain research shows that not a single part of our brain is inactive. On the contrary, the brain functions at 100%, which is why scientists can map it section by section based on its function. It's the reason Thomas Harvey cut Einstein's brain into 240 pieces. The logical question then is, if everyone's brain functions at 100%, why are there geniuses like Einstein? Here's an interesting insight. While the 10% brain capacity idea is a myth, one piece of information in the film Lucy is surprisingly accurate.
Most of the rest, there's lots of information were totally real in the film.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy.
This information is correct. The number of connections in the human brain far exceeds the number of stars in our galaxy. This is because the human brain contains about 100 billion nerve cells, and each nerve cell can connect to thousands of others, forming a neural network that totals 100 trillion connections, or even more.
So brain connections link various parts of the structure to each other, but those are made up of hundreds and thousands of connections from individual neurons.
What do these neural connections signify? They represent your memory, and your learning processes. When you learn something new, a new connection is formed. Watch how the neural connections in a baby's brain increase over time. And look at this microscopic footage showing two nerve cells making a connection with each other.
What you're looking at here are two neurons under the microscope that I've filmed. And if you wait really patiently, you'll be able to see them connecting to one another.
This is precisely what happens in your brain when it receives a stimulus. For example, when you watch this video, read a book, or study anything at all. These connections become stronger and more numerous the more frequently you practice. Your brain consequently becomes more effective at thinking. Remember, those trillions of connections are only the potential. How many have actually formed in your brain depends on how much stimulus your brain has received.
We're born with as many neurons and as many connections as you're going to need. They can go from any spot of the brain to every spot with as many connections as possible.
And that's a brilliant design by Mother Nature because it gives us this incredible amount of possibilities for the future.
Once your brain receives a lot of stimulation, it will eventually change, or in other words, undergo an upgrade. In neuroscience, this phenomenon is called plasticity, or neuroplasticity. It means the brain is not static, but plastic. It can adapt depending on how often you use it. This is likely what happened to Einstein's brain. It may have started as a normal brain, but because he thought so intensely and so often about science and the laws of nature, the structure of his brain was also modified.
What brain plasticity emphasizes is that if we look at a single neuron, a single cell in the brain, and we realize that with continuous stimulus, and this stimulus can be anything, an emotion, a feeling, a behavior, a habit, an exercise, an experience. The repetition of the experience, the repetition of the stimulus would cause a phenomenon known as neurogenesis. And what neurogenesis means is the creation of new neurons when there was none before.